Greetings, greetings. Thank you guys so much for tuning in to the first ever Unbiased Sports Conglomerate episode. So, today, guys, we're going to do a recap of round one of the 2025 NFL draft. There was a lot of surprises that took place last night in Green Bay, Wisconsin, and we're just going to get right into it. So, the number one overall pick were the Tennessee Titans, of course. They were the first team selecting in the NFL draft. And Tennessee had a very rough season last year. I know a lot of fans down in Nashville really took last season um, to heart. There were three teams in the NFL last season, speaking of how bad the Titans were, that went 3-14. So 3 wins and 14 losses. And the other two teams were the New York Giants and the Cleveland Browns. So Tennessee, New York, and Cleveland were tied for the worst record um, in the NFL last year, and Tennessee was able to get the first overall pick. And there was a lot of intrigue, I'll say, going into um, the first pick leading up into the draft. As we got closer to the draft, it was becoming more of this is going to be the general consensus that Cam was going to be the first player off the board. There was a lot of rumors and speculations of Tennessee trading down, getting more draft capital. Because if you're a Titans fan, you know that Tennessee has a lot of holes they need to plug. Uh, they need a tackle. Traylon Burks, the guy who they essentially traded AJ Brown for a few years ago, didn't pan out. He's looking like a bust. So you're gonna need a receiver. Calvin Ridley is going pretty good. He had somewhat of a bounce back season, but they need an edge rush, right? So they did what they had to do as far as the biggest hole, which was quarterback, right? And Will Levis has some fans around the league. Well, he had some going into the draft, right? Coming out of Kentucky, big, physical, strong quarterback. He really didn't pan out in Tennessee, right? And you could create a myriad of excuses as to why. I personally just don't think the skill set he had translated to the NFL game. He was a game manager in the SEC, but there's a different monster when you're playing in the NFL. And in the AFC South, Tennessee didn't look like they really had an upward trajectory with Will Levis. So, Brian Callahan and crew, new GM, they came in and they wanted to create a new culture here, and they wanted to select a quarterback that they could put their stamp on, right? And taking Ward right at the top and passing up on a quote unquote generational talent like a Travis Hunter, right? Some considered it to be risky because you look at a guy like Travis Hunter, and we'll talk about him in a second. Um, some people suggested that Tennessee wait a year to take a quarterback, but another year with Will Levis just isn't what they really wanted. I personally think Cam Ward is just really, really a guy you can't pass up on if you need a quarterback. Okay, if you had a quarterback or a bridge guy, maybe, but Tennessee, that quarterback room was absolutely horrendous, right? So you had to take a quarterback. I do think that Cam Ward is the best quarterback in this draft. I think Shadur Sanders was the second best quarterback, right? Just based on completion percentage and playing behind the horrible offensive line he did and still looked phenomenal. But Cam Ward, man, is just one of those guys who, out of the University of Miami, um, he just has that pocket IQ that you can't really coach up. You know what I mean? There's certain things that you can coach about a quarterback. You can coach certain fundamentals, right? But he has um, a lot of the intangibles that just come God given, right? The way he's able to step back and look at a secondary and know what he's looking at, the way that he just has the ability to have amnesia when he makes a bad throw or like he makes a bad play. Some quarterbacks, especially young guys coming out of college, making that transition into the NFL, they have an inability to reconnect to the next play once they've made a bad play of this or that. a turnover or a drop, or they overthrow or underthrow, or they feel the pressure, or they get sacked, they have an inability to jump right back into the next play. Cam Ward has the ability to make a mistake, wipe that mistake away, and come out the next play as if it didn't happen. And that really helps you at the next level. I know we talk a lot about it being a quarterback's league. One of the things that make a quarterback elite is the ability to incur a mishap, right? Learn from it, of course, take the data that you need to take and discard what you don't, but move on to the next play. And that's what Cam does. Great arm, great pocket presence, all the confidence in the world. If I'm a Tennessee fan, I'm very excited about Cam Ward. 6'2", 219 pounds. He's not a small guy. This is a guy who you really feel confident as you try to create a new culture in Tennessee. We all know historically the Steve McNairs, the Eddie Georges, the Frank Wychecks, the Javon Curses, the Albert Haynesworth, being a ground and pound type team. I think this new Tennessee Titans era is going to be more of an air raid. So be very, very, it's going to be very exciting looking forward if you're a Titans fan. Number 2, the Jacksonville Jaguars. Now, originally, the Cleveland Browns had this pick at number 2. Now, a report came out earlier that Cleveland and Jacksonville had worked out a trade for this roughly 3 weeks ago. So it's new to us, but it's not new to people behind the scenes in both organizations here. And, of course, Jacksonville, they traded up and they took Travis Hunter, who's an athlete, 6 foot, 188 pounds, out of Colorado, the Heisman winner. A lot of people projected him to go into the NFL as a defensive back. But it looks like from all reports and all analysts and insiders, he's going to go in to rookie training camp, right, as a wide receiver. So you're going to pair him with Brian Thomas Jr., who is a complete stud. So Trevor Lawrence now has on both sides of the offense, right, on both sides of the alignment, on the left side and on the right side, you legitimately have 2 number 1 wide receivers now. So from an offensive weapon standpoint, Trevor Lawrence doesn't have a lot of excuses right here. Like, this has to be a great season for him from an offensive passing standpoint. So now the thing about Travis Hunter is that he's such a unique and dynamic player. One would have to ask themselves, okay, what position is he going to play primarily? Now, I hope he plays the receiver, because I do think that there's far more upside for him making plays offensively than what he could potentially do on the defensive end. I think he would be successful at either, but I do think he has to pick a side. I do not think you could have a successful long-term career in the National Football League, which some use the acronym not for long. I don't think you can play both sides of the ball successfully in the NFL and not just get destroyed. Or it's such a sport to where if you're going to be elite, you have to have so many reps at a certain spot. I don't think you can have a foot on both sides of the fence. I think you have to pick a side. You can't sit down the middle and be great at both for sure, but not even at either, right? So if he plays both positions, he may be a good player, maybe above average. He's going to be above average because he's a freak of nature, right? But to be like a all-pro Hall of Famer, I really want him. And I know he may not listen to this. He's going to do what he wants to do, right? I mean, he's young, he's very confident, as he should be. He's a freak. But I think he's going to have to pick a position, right? I think if he 100% commits to the cornerback position, I think he has top 10 potential. I think if he commits 100% to being a wide receiver in the National Football League, pair it up with a guy like Brian Thomas, who could teach him a lot as well. I think he's going to be a really good receiver. I mean, really good receiver for a long time. So it's going to be very exciting. The AFC South at the top of this draft here, Tennessee taking Ward, Jacksonville taking Travis Hunter. They had some big holes to fill, right? And the idea in a perfect world is that you essentially drafted two positions on this. You took a DB and you took a wide out. So yeah, very interesting to see what goes on there. So the next team selecting here is the New York Giants. Now, if you paid any attention to the draft coming in, this was going to be where a lot of the dominoes began to fall, right? There were some, some reports saying that they were interviewing Shedeur Sanders a lot. And this is when the whole where is Shedeur going to go to fiasco kind of began, right? We knew Cam was going to be the first quarterback selected off the board. But hey, number 3, are they going to go defense? Are they going to go offense? The Giants made a few moves in the offseason, okay? So they ended last season with Tommy DeVito as their quarterback, right? We all knew Tommy wasn't going to be the quarterback of the future for the G-Men. They come into free agency. They sign Jameis Winston, who, for as many jokes as people make about Jameis Winston, saying that he's not really consistent, and I get it. He's not the most accurate quarterback, but Jameis Winston is a solid bridge quarterback in this league. He's a guy who I kind of call him almost like a black Brett Favre, where he's just a gunslinger, man. This guy will come out and he'll throw for 25 touchdowns, but he'll give you 24 interceptions too. So the good kind of equals up to the bad sometimes with him. He's a good quarterback, but my God, he's kind of reckless with the ball sometimes. But when it's really good with him, is really good. But then the opposite is true when it's really bad with Jameis Winston. Oh my goodness, we got to get this guy out of here. But so they go into the offseason, they sign Jameis Winston. And then if that's not enough, Pittsburgh said, hey, we're going to go in a different direction from Russell Wilson. And then, the Russell Wilson recruit season started. Didn't last too long. He ended up going to the New York Giants. So now the New York Giants quarterback room coming into last night, you have Russell Wilson as the starting quarterback, presumably, right? You have Jameis Winston as the backup quarterback, and you have Tommy DeVito as the third string quarterback. So, of course, now you get to look at the defensive end. You got Brian Burns, who you traded, and you got from the Panthers. You got Thibodeau, who I think is a very underrated young up-and-coming pass rusher. He's getting to that point now to where he's going to have to make a move and really make a name for himself. And I think he can do that with the help here. So the Giants at number 3 take Abdul Carter, edge rusher from Penn State. This is a pick I really like here. So 6'3", 250 pounds, man, can stick his fists in the grass, can stand back up and coverage and defend some passes. He's a really, really tough guy to pass up on. And the Giants filled a really big hole here, man. I mean, when the Giants in the past won Super Bowls, they had a great way to rush the passer. They haven't had that in a couple of years. So Abdul Carter, edge from Penn State, he feels that. Some people kind of compare him to Micah Parsons out in Dallas. I can see some of the similarities. I don't really think that's the perfect comp for him. I think he is a more rangy, wiry guy, right? But hey, I think he's going to be a plus, and I think he's going to be an instant guy that you can plug in right away. Speaking of plug and play guys here, number 4, the New England Patriots. They made a move this offseason to where they were going to stick with Drew Lock at quarterback, right? So, Joe Milton had a lot of hype, but they moved off of him. And they said, hey, if Drake May's going to be our guy, we need to protect him because the Pats didn't have the best offensive line in football last season. Actually had one of the top 5 worst. So how do you address that? Will Campbell, by far, is the best offensive tackle in this draft. 6'6", 319 pounds. Now, the knock on Will is that he has very short arms. So they kind of joke in some circles and say like he has the T-Rex thing going on where he's a huge guy, but his arms aren't that long. Luckily, I will say that there are guys who have had success as pass blockers and run blockers with shorter arms. We see Slater out with the Chargers becoming an all-pro as a rookie, and he has a really short arms. His measurables aren't the most intimidating, but he knows how to get inside and really hold up a line and really create a wall. So, yeah, the Patriots took Will Campbell at 4. Number 5 is Cleveland. Now, Cleveland originally had number 2. Keep up. They traded with Jacksonville, and now the Cleveland Browns are number 5 in last night's draft. Now, coming into this season, you could say, okay, will they give Deshaun Watson another year, or are they going to go quarterback here? Can they take Shedeur Sanders and start the next era in Cleveland football with a quarterback, or are they going to give Deshaun Watson one more year to see whether or not they made a mistake in paying him all that money a few years back? I really think this being the first full, complete offseason healthy for Deshaun Watson, that he can really make a turnaround, possibly get comeback player of the year, because a lot of people have written Deshaun Watson off. I still think at his age and with his skill set, if he has his confidence back about himself, I think he can be a very good, quarterback this upcoming season. So they said, hey, we worked really hard this offseason to get Myles Garrett to come back. One thing Myles needed desperately last season was help on the interior. So they said, okay, we hear you loud and clear. We're going to take Mason Graham, defensive lineman from the University of Michigan, go Wolverines, 6'3", 296 pounds. And that's who they took to put in the middle of that defensive line in Cleveland. So now if you are an AFC North organization with a weak offensive line, now you not only have to double Myles Garrett, but now you got to figure out how to keep Mason Graham from wreaking havoc in the middle of the field now, which is a huge, big upgrade to that defensive line here. Cleveland has been looking to upgrade the inside of that line for a long time. Graham is going to help. I'm not sure how dominant he's going to be initially because of his size. If I had to give this pick a grade, I'll probably give it a C plus, maybe. Can't really say it's a horrible pick because it is an area of need, but the role they're going to have him play, nose tackle, probably. I don't know if he's big enough really to compete at the level. But hey, Aaron Donald wasn't the biggest guy coming out of college, and he's a first ballot Hall of Famer. So only time to tell. Number 6, this was probably the easiest pick after a Cam Ward in the draft. The Las Vegas Raiders almost at Oakland. They took Ashton Jeanty, running back from Boise State, 5'9", 211 pounds. The Raiders and Pete Carroll want to run the football. I mean, Pete was up in the great Northwest, up in Seattle for a few years. And even in his days at USC, right? Southern California with Reggie Bush and Lindell White, and then transitioning to the Seahawks and, coaching up Beast Mode and those guys up there. He wants to run the ball. Ashton Jeanty was hands down the clear-cut best running back in this draft. And it's a big gap from Jeanty to the second best running back. So normally I hate taking a running back this high because normally you can get a good back in the later rounds. But Ashton Jeanty was a guy you cannot pass up on. I will say he's a special player. Okay, I give this probably an A- here, only because we are not sure how that O-line is going to hold up. So the correlation of his success is going to be very indicative on what do they do to plug up the center of that line. They got a really good young center out there in Vegas, but let's see, can they add some guards in day 2 or day 3 to help Jeanty have some bigger holes to run through. 7th pick here. This is very interesting. The New York Jets were on the board here. They brought in Justin Fields this offseason, which I think is probably going to end up being one of the more underrated moves of this offseason. I'm very high on Justin Fields. I think he has all of the potential and skill set in the world. I think bringing in Coach Glenn. Aaron Glenn is going to be really big for creating a foundation of confidence to where Fields could come in and really, really get back into that mindset he had at Ohio State that made him a top draft pick. This may be his last opportunity to prove himself as a starter, but hey, we've seen guys have multiple stops in the league and struggle. We've seen people go to organizations and not have the most success right away. We've seen Baker Mayfield bounce around from team to team. We've seen Sam Darnold bounce around from team to team and find success later on. The previous team that we just talked about, Geno Smith, it took him a while to catch on. So you never know, but I really think that Justin Fields is going to have a breakout season this year. And they took our man Amimbu, offensive tackle out of Missouri. Being a big SEC guy, I can say I watched a lot of Missouri football. And I will tell you, this is a pick here that I'm kind of iffy about here. Now, the Jets, from a place of need, they needed a tackle. Oh, my God. They needed a tackle. The Jets had to get a tackle that play on the right side. And of course, this kid really fits the bill. I just think he's really raw, man. He's going to take some time. But now the talent is there. Now, I preferred a Kelvin Banks over a Mimbo. But, man, it's one of those picks here that is the upside of a guy better than the reality of a guy, right? And the reality of Kelvin Banks, I think he's going to be just day one. After he shakes the commissioner's hand and go do his interviews and he gets to rookie camp, I think he's going to be one of the best tackles in the league in about 2 years. Now, our man can be serviceable. I think he has a higher upside, but just right now, he's very green. He's very green. Struggled a little bit on run plays, held up pretty well on pass plays. So we'll see. If he pans out, Justin Fields could really use a great right tackle on the right side to anchor the right side of that offensive line up in the Empire State. So we'll see. Let's see here. Panthers, number 8 overall. They took Ted McMillan. Really good receiver, man. I think this was probably the greatest option for Bryce Young. I did think personally Matt Golden was better based on, style of play. But looking at the Panthers offense, right, they had a really good rookie receiver last year out of South Carolina, who I think is going to probably be better as a 2. Carolina went into this draft needing an X receiver. They needed a number 1, and I think they got it here. Big kid out of Arizona, 6'4", 219 pounds. He's a good route runner, really huge catch radius, and Bryce being at a state in his career now, very early on, some of his passes are kind of wild. Some of his passes may not be as accurate as they're going to be in about 2 or 3 years. So having a receiver that can kind of take bad balls and catch them, I think it's going to really work to his benefit. So good job for the Panthers bringing in McMillan out of Arizona. I think it's going to be this is kind of like one of those gamble picks, right? I would give it a C plus B minus if I had to put a grade on it. But we'll see. The NFC South isn't the best division of football, so hopefully they'll be able to get some extra wins down in Carolina. Number 9, we have the New Orleans Saints on the board. And right here was a very, very questionable area in the draft if you paid attention, because here is where all of the experts were telling you this is where Shedeur Sanders could go. Derek Carr is kind of on the outs in the Saints organization right now. And, the Saints do have a young quarterback there. I don't know if Spencer Rattler is really going to be the long-term answer there. He showed a few flashes for the Saints last year, but I don't know if I'm part of the Saints brass. I'm looking long term and saying, hey, this is the guy that we need. So they took Kelvin Banks Jr., who I think is the best tackle. How did he get past? How was he the second tackle pick? I have no earthly idea, but hey, we've seen stranger things in the NFL draft. Kelvin Banks Jr., man, 6'5", 315 pounds, big boy. This is a good sound pick for the Saints. Banks could play either side. I thought he was better than Mambu, as I've said for the 17th time, who went in front of him. But the Saints offensive line, they needed help. And now they just have to figure out the quarterback position. They still have time. Shedeur Sanders is still on the board. So I'm not sure when they pick again. But, now they can address the quarterback. But they, at least whatever quarterback they decide to go with this fall, they have a guy who is going to be a perennial all-pro type tackle, at least for the next 8 to 9 years. So we'll see. Number 10, we got Colston Loveland, tight end, University of Michigan, to the Chicago Bears. Look, I love this pick for the Bears. He was my top tight end coming in. I think he was one of the best pass catchers of tight ends, and he's going to fit perfect into this Ben Johnson system, man. Oh, my God. You look at what Ben Johnson did in Detroit with those tight ends he had up there, man. And another thing, too, for those of you who are Bears fans, you guys may know, Caleb Williams his best balls come out the seam. He can make a few throws on the perimeter on the move, but his best throws are always down the seam. And if he can have a tight end like Colston Loveland, who I think is going to be really good. He's a little stiff in like some of his routes, but my God, he just knows how to bring the ball in. If you put it within his area of radius, he's going to come down with the ball. So he's going to be a really good weapon here if they want to do, like a 12-man, or like if he wants to do like a two tight end set. They still got Cole Kmet in Chicago, who I think is a serviceable tight end. Like he's in that 25 to 30 range. He's not a top guy, right? But Colston really gives me George Kittle vibes a little bit. So we're gonna see what they do in Chicago, but this is a really good pick. Number 11, I love this pick. San Francisco 49ers were on the board here. And they decided to go with a Georgia Bulldog here, right? A lot of Bulldogs really going out here. They got Mikael Williams out of Georgia, the edge, 6'5", 260. They had to get pass rush, have to go with Nick Bosa, man, okay? Now, I will say Williams didn't play well in 2024. He did in 2023. I mean, if he had came out last year, he probably would have been a top 3 pick. He played really great last year for the Bulldogs. But he gives the 49ers a bookend to go with Bosa. So now if you're playing the 49ers, you got some pressure coming on both sides of that line. And that's when the 49ers historically have been their best. When they got pressure coming on both ends, you're like, oh, boy, you better have some tackles that can hold up, because those boards are going to be coming now. And number 12, America's team, right? Dallas Cowboys. They took interior offensive lineman here, right? Some people like to think of him as a tackle, but I think his best work down in Tuscaloosa was at the guard. And the Cowboys, having just lost Zach Martin, they had a big hole at right guard. And Tyler Booker, not the most sexy pick, not the most attractive, like on paper pick. They went Tyler Booker, University of Alabama, 6'5", 321. For all intents and purposes, was the leader of that locker room, was the heart and soul of that line down there in Alabama. And look, the Dallas Cowboys, for better or worse, say what you will say about them, they have been their best when they've been able to have big maulers, big dogs up front to just spring open those tailbacks and help hold up for the QBs. Dak Prescott's best season was when he had that elite offensive line, when he had guys like Fredericks, and he had Martin, and he had Tyron Smith. When he had that all-pro offensive line, that was when he had his best season and played his best football and was the most healthy. So being a quarterback who's more injury-prone, like Dak Prescott, you need to have an interior lineman like Tyler Booker, right? And there's a lot of Tylers on that O-line right now, which is funny. One of my good buddies, he has a sports page, and he posted a meme about all of the Tylers that the Cowboys have up front. But they took Tyler Booker. He's a nasty, mean dog. I mean, he's a mauler, man. He is a now he is a little limited in terms of athletic ability, right? But I think he works for what the Cowboys need, and they're just trying to get better up front, right? I know Kurt Warner before the draft show, he made a joke and said the Cowboys always go O-line in the first round, and people laugh at it, but when you have an elite offensive line, when you have help up front, it does so much good for your organization. So good pick by Jerry Jones and Will McClay and those boys out there in Frisco. And then you have the rest of the first round. Miami took Kenneth Grant at number 13 from Michigan. The Indianapolis Colts took Tyler Warren, Penn State tight end. Falcons took Jalen Walker, linebacker, University of Georgia. Really good value spot for Walker. There were some injury concerns by teams about him, which is probably why he slid. But I think he's going to upgrade that pass rush and help defend the perimeter for the Falcons as well. Walter Nolan, number 16th overall pick by the Arizona Cardinals. He's a really good inside player who he gets to really team up and study and learn the game from Calais Campbell and Dalvin Tomlinson to give them a really good upgrade. And I think that's what their line needed. They needed that interior help. Nolan has big-time ability, guys, if you guys don't know who this is. But he needs to be more consistent. I think he needs to dedicate himself more to the craft. So hopefully being around an NFL Man of the Year, an all-time great defensive lineman in Calais. Hopefully, he can adopt some of those habits and become who Arizona needs him to be. I'm not really a fan of Ole Miss guys, being a Tennessee fan, but I think the Cardinals got one. My favorite defensive pick, man, in this first round, dude, was number 17. The Cincinnati Bengals took my guy, Shamar Stewart, edge pass rusher out of Texas A&M. Listen, the Bengals, they needed edge help, okay? Stewart is raw, and some experts may tell you that, he lacks football instincts, but there wasn't a lot of production to his game. Now, the tape shows a player who needs to learn how to define and chisel his craft a little bit, but my God, is the talent there. If he gets up there to Ohio and he really buys into the program that Zach Taylor and his staff has up there, I think Cincinnati can really have a steal at edge. I mean, 6'5", 267. I mean, he can get after it, man. He has a motor, and I think that's what got him picked so high. He just has a motor, man. You can't coach that motor. Like certain intangibles, he lacks a little bit. Sometimes he's undisciplined, may get you a few flags, but man, he's a guy who could really get out there. Number 18, the Seattle Seahawks. They took Gray Zabal out of North Dakota State. He could play guard, tackle, or center. When I studied his tape, he was one of the more versatile guys coming into the draft as far as offensive linemen. So it works, man. He showed off at the Senior Bowl that really helped him because he was originally graded as a day 2 guy, but man, he just took every rep possible at the Senior Bowl. He stole reps from guys, and he was just slinging guys all around the field, and that really boosted up his draft capital. So good for him. 19th pick here, Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Mike Evans is getting old. Chris Godwin is coming off an injury. They take the wide receiver factory of The Ohio State University. They take Emeka Igbokwe. And I know I'm saying his name wrong, Igbokwe. But man, this kid is a beast, man. I'm telling you. I love him as a player. And I mean, listen. He, in this offense, you literally have 3 number 1 receivers. He's going to come in and probably be a slot guy, maybe play a little bit of 2, the Godwin's 1. If I to Mike Evans one. If Godwin is still not all the way 100, you can kind of slow down the rehab process of Chris Godwin and make sure he's 100% healthy. You don't have to rush him back now because you took Emeka, who's really good. Big body receiver, 6'1", 202. You know how they like those receivers down in Tampa Bay. So big, I'm sure Baker Mayfield is a happy man having this guy added to his receiver room. Number 20 right here, we have the Denver Broncos on the board. And they take Jahdae Barron, cornerback out of Texas. He's a very good defensive back who can do a lot of things. I think he'll play inside on the next level, but he can play outside, and he's such a big corner. He's at 5'11", 194. I think he's a little bigger than that. He could actually play some safety if need be, which is a really good benefit because he's a really good football player, but I don't think he's a pure corner. So they're going to have to work on that a little bit. Having Pat Surtain Jr. as probably one of the top 1-2 corners in the league on your roster really allows you to have flexibility with Jahdae. He could have dropped a little lower, but I see with the versatility he can offer and how big and physical he is, Denver can do a lot in that secondary with him. Number 21, Pittsburgh Steelers, man. Everyone and their mama thought that Deion's son was going to go here, but Pittsburgh has some different ideas right here. So now I will say, if you take the emotion out of it, I know they don't have a good quarterback, and maybe they know something up there that we don't know yet. Maybe they finally got Aaron Rodgers to come through or whatever, but they picked Derek Harmon out of the University of Oregon, 6'5", 310. And this pick makes a lot of sense because they need young players on that defensive line. Passing on a quarterback was the right move. The Steelers love big people early in the draft, okay? So they picked him here. I know a lot of Pittsburgh fans aren't really crazy about that, okay? And we'll go ahead and just speed rush through the rest of the draft here. Nothing really stands out too much here in 22 to the end. Amarian Hampton, running back from North Carolina to the Chargers at 22. Matt Golden, receiver out of Texas to Green Bay. Donovan Jackson, interior offensive lineman, Ohio State to Minnesota Vikings. Jackson Dart, Ole Miss quarterback to the New York Giants. James Pierce Jr., edge out of Tennessee, one of my favorite guys. To me, he was a top 10 talent, but his off-the-field incidents kind of like hurt his stock here. But my goodness, James Pierce, pay attention to what Atlanta is doing with adding these great pass rushers in the first round. They took the kid from Georgia earlier in the draft, Jalen Walker, the linebacker. But, man, those two down in the ATL are going to really make life tough for those other quarterbacks in the NFC South. Number 27, Malachi Starks, safety out of Georgia. He's a good player. He has a lot of range. He's going to be a nice addition to the back end of their defense. Number 28 overall pick, Tyler Williams, defensive line, Ohio State, to the Detroit Lions. They needed depth. They needed more help on the defensive line, and Williams is a player who scouts kept raving about throughout the whole process. They loved him. So Detroit picked him up here. Number 29, Washington Commanders, almost said Redskins. Josh Connerly Jr., offensive tackle out of Oregon. Man, those Oregon boys are going very, very high. He's a player who I thought would go in the first round, but the Commanders needed more help up front on their offensive line because, man, Jalen Daniels really shocked the world last year. And that new ownership, man, they're not like, Snyder. They are saying, hey, we're not going to go flashy. We're going to go solid. We got to protect this quarterback. Jalen Daniels can be a guy who's going to have Washington competing for NFC titles for the next 12 years. Let's protect him. Good pick here. Number 30, Maxwell Harrison, cornerback out of Kentucky. Another SEC kid that I saw a lot of last year. And my goodness, I love this pick as any in the first round. He's my top cornerback, not named Travis Hunter. And the Bills needed corner help. If you're going to play number 15 from Kansas City every January to get to the Super Bowl, you damn well better have a cornerback that can do something to make his job a little tougher. He's going to be an immediate starter. He's an aggressive corner who will upgrade that position a great deal. When they lost Tre'Davious White, they really didn't replace him. Maxwell Harrison, Great pick. Number 31, the Eagles already have Nakobe Dean coming off an injury. So why not take a linebacker who can step in and help right away if Dean isn't ready? They took Jaheed Campbell out of the University of Alabama, linebacker. Campbell can start next to Zach Braun right away. This is a very solid pick. I don't know how Philadelphia does it. I don't know how they get these guys who are supposed to be top 10, 15 guys. And they're picking at the end of the draft. They're in the NFC title game every year, and they're picking these guys who bad teams should really pick. But hey, last pick of the first round, and I'm going to wrap this episode up, guys. Josh Simmons, Ohio State, Ohio State University. He was a Buckeye offensive tackle, a huge kid, 6'5", 317 pounds. He's the best tackle in the class. When healthy, the Chiefs won't be forced to rush him back from a torn patella, but he will be their left tackle of the future. I love this pick right here because he should have went a lot higher than this. This is more like of a stash pick. Back in the day when you would see NBA teams draft European guys who they won't be over here in the States to play for like a year or two, but when they get here, you know it's going to be a big addition to that team. So round 2 will be tonight, guys. Thank you all so much for listening to this episode. Be sure to like, comment, share, and subscribe to the Unbiased Sports Conglomerate. I'm your host, CJ, and as always, thank you for your support, and I'm out. Peace.